Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. Two Supreme Court judges delivered a split verdict today on whether Karnataka's ban on the hijab in classrooms should stay or go, and called for a larger bench to take it up. While Justice Hemant Gupta backed the hijab ban, Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia said he respectfully disagreed with him and he considered the education of women students most important. Both judges made very strong remarks as they pronounced their orders. Justice Dhulia said, and I quote, "All the petitioners want is to wear a hijab. Is it too much to ask in a democracy? How is it against public order, morality or health, or even decency?" Justice Gupta said the religious belief cannot be carried to a secular school maintained out of state funds. What we'll do on this program is look at the judgments and the statements made by both judges. Remember, they were dissenting. They disagreed with each other, and therefore this moves to a larger bench of the Supreme Court. It goes first to the bench of the Chief Justice, who then decides how to handle this entire case. Joining us on this program, Pramila Nesargi, member of the BJP, Dr. Ira Rizvi. She's a rights activist. Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate of the Supreme Court. Shraddhan Farasat, one of the petitioners in this case, and Geeta Bhatt, the political analyst. Thank you all very much for being with us. Pramila Nesargi, let's look at some of the key quotes of the judges, and let's look, for starters, at what Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia had to say. He said, asking a schoolgirl to take off her hijab at the school gate is an invasion of her privacy. It clearly violates her fundamental right and the right to dignity and privacy even inside her school gate. How would you respond to this view?
I was only disappointed by the judgment. I only, that much I can say. I am not here to comment upon the views of the judge who has dissented and split judgment. But I only want to say the judgment that was delivered by the three judges of our Karnataka High Court was really a decent judgment, a dignified judgment, and it upheld the rights of women. I am only concerned with the rights of women. I am not concerned with one particular community wearing a hijab or not. What's the right of a woman? Whether a right of dignity and decorum and a right, how it can be protected.
Right.
I want to know how it can become a fundamental right. Wearing a dress, is it a fundamental right? How it can come within the fundamental right? It is beyond my comprehension to think of.
All right, ma'am.
I'll just tell you. We have a right to walk. It is a fundamental right.
Right. Equality of women has to be protected is one of the points you mentioned. Shraddhan Farasat, where does the issue of equality of women actually come in to what Justice Dhulia had to say? Where is that threatened at all, if anything? As I understand it, the court was trying to protect the rights of women.
Yes, I think judgment, in fact, is, I mean, speaking for myself, I found it to be very refreshing judgment, very lucidly written. The principles were set out very clearly. What he says, and this is really the core of this entire matter, is that you have to give agency to the women themselves, right? It's about their choice in terms of course, they are not, these girls were not saying that they will not wear the uniform. All they were saying that over and above the uniform, they are wanting to wear a headscarf. And she said that's the agency of the woman. And if you take that away, to wear or not to wear is a decision. And of course, that decision will be informed by a whole host of things, maybe her familial background, maybe her religious belief, maybe everything else. And it's a very complex kind of a decision. It may even have some level of influence of elders, etc., which may over a period of time go away. That's not the point. The point is at that point in time, she feels she has a genuine belief that she wants to wear this headscarf. And by allowing her to do that and in your education, you are in fact empowering the woman. And he was quite concerned, and his judge said that if we don't do this, what we are going to do is have women out of the education system. Anyway, it's difficult to get women into the education system, especially in...
Pramila Nesargi, why don't you come in on that for just a moment? Because just to build on what he said, Justice Dhulia said the topmost for me is education of a girl child. The girl child in many areas does housework before school. Are we making her life better by banning the hijab? I mean, what are we focusing on?
No, I just want to know the question that has been posed before the Supreme Court and the High Court was entirely different. I do not know how the other judge decided the matter. That was not the question. The question before the court was whether a lady, girls of a particular community can wear the hijab inside the classroom. Nobody restricted what she wears in the road, what she wears in the public domain, what she wears at home. It was not the question.
Pramila ji,
nobody restricted it. But in a school where the uniform is fixed, what should be worn is the question. I just want to tell you one thing. You see, when I was a practicing advocate in the beginning, when matter came up before Justice Sadashivaya, on that day very cold atmosphere. So what I had done was, inside my black coat, I had worn a green sweater. I started arguing. Judge said, no, I don't hear you. I started arguing. He said, I can't see you. I didn't know what I should do. Then one of my colleagues said, you are not in the proper uniform. Judges will not hear. The judge then immediately...
And do you believe that judge was correct?
Do
you believe that judge was correct, ma'am?
You know what the
because I think that judge who denied you the right to actually appear before him in the manner that you seem fit was entirely wrong.
Please hear me. The further thing you must hear me. Hear me. The Honorable Judge said there should not be any distraction when we are hearing a matter.
Right.
You can't wear. That is how he said.
Right.
The school also same thing. The lady is wearing the hijab.
Hijab is a distraction,
ma'am. In the way of the concentration of the other students studying in the class.
All right, ma'am, you've said a lot of points, but just one or two basic points before I go across to my panelists. Ma'am, both you and I have friends, some of whom may wear a hijab, some of whom may not. To our friends who wear a hijab, do we see that as being some sort of a distraction? Does it make a difference to any of us? People wear headgear, people don't wear headgear. Is that a distraction for you, ma'am? Should it be a distraction for anybody?
What they wear, the manner in which they're hiding something is always a distraction.
Ma'am, don't you have friends of yours who wear a hijab?
It will be a curious.
Ma'am, do you see your friends, and I'm sure you have friends who have worn a hijab. Does that hijab act as a distraction to you, ma'am? It's a simple question. Ma'am, does the hijab act as...
Classroom is a different thing. Classroom is a place where you have to study. There must be concentration.
How is it a distraction? Ma'am, Dr. Ira Rizvi is with us as well. Dr. Rizvi, how would you respond to that? Oh, you happen to be wearing a hijab. I promise you I didn't notice until I noticed just now. It's not a distraction. Who cares? That's the basic point. It's your choice.
It's not a distraction. In case of classroom, education is a main subject, not a uniform. Uniform code is just an educational institution, is superficial. It's not a permanent, or it's like a cosmetic thing. In America and UK, there is no system of uniform. You have to focus on the quality of education, not on the wearing of hijab. Hijab is my right. If I want to wear it, I will. If I don't want to wear it, I cannot. I am a dentist, look at me. And I am working with my hijab. And I studied in my school and college with hijab. Wearing a hijab is my identity. Okay, it shows that I am a Muslim. I know, but it's not a distraction. Quran says you have to wear a hijab. I usually wear hijab because Quran said, because I had a faith in that. If I had a faith in Quran and Islam, I will do. If I don't have, I will not. See the A.R. Rahman's daughter, one is wearing hijab, one is not wearing hijab. This is ultimately their choice. So it's our choice what we have to wear or what we have not. Hijab is not a distraction.
All right. All right. In fact, I wanted to go across to Geeta ji for her views on this. Ma'am, Geeta ji, you are an educator yourself. You've been associated with education. Aren't we in our country being sidetracked from that fundamental goal which all of us agree on? There has to be education, and therefore, if a woman wants to wear a hijab, Let her wear it. If you don't like it,
Yes,
it's one thing, but ultimately let the child study.
Vishnuji, absolutely. In fact, we know the Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao campaign, it is
Yes.
already there, in the country. And definitely, and especially for, Muslim women, it is very important that they need to be educated and integrated with the mainstream of the society. But, unfortunately, Vishnuji, I just want to put
All women, I would suggest, have to be educated. But carry on, yes.
Yes, no, I would just like to put forth two points. First is that today in 21st century, Indian women, they are designing rockets which are going to Mars. There are Indian women boxers who are joining army. But there are, in the same society, there are girls who, whether they will go to school is being decided on based on a piece of cloth. Now that is something which actually needs an introspection. Besides that, the second point that I want to put forth is that while it is being said that why these Muslim girls, they are not being allowed to go to school, the question here is that it is the autonomy of an institution versus the right of an individual. Now please tell me that in a school, what would be the timetable? At what time the classes will start, at what time the classes will finish? At what time any cultural programs will be held? At what time examinations or on which days examinations will be held? Or what would be the dress code of which the students are going to wear? Whether it is to be decided by an institution or it is to be decided by certain individuals who want to impose their point of view on the institution. So the whole conflict here is based on
But ma'am, in a multi...
No. Women can go to the parliament wearing a burqa, covering their self from top to bottom. No one is going to stop them. They can come to universities. There are universities where you can cover yourself totally and attend the classroom. No one is stopping. But it is an institution which is based on, its autonomy gives it that right.
All right. So basically what you're saying... No, I take your point. Geeta-ji, I take your point. I take your point because what you're saying is what Justice Gupta has said. And I just want to go through this so that, I have balance in this program. I want to reflect what both the judges actually said. A uniform is prescribed, said Justice Gupta, to assimilate students without any distinction. He also asked, is a government order infringing the fundamental rights of students? The freedom of expression does not extend to wearing a headscarf. I just wanted to go across to Sanjay Hegde. Two questions. The first one, would you like to reflect on what Geeta ji just had to say, that in this century, do we really need women wearing a headscarf when women have made progress in so many areas? Do you associate the headscarf with progress or a lack thereof? That's my question.
Who am I to decide? Who are you to decide? It's
Right.
for the woman to decide, right?
Right.
There are people who feel freer wearing a hijab. There are people who feel freer not wearing it. And then now comes the question of institutions. A private institution stands on a different footing. But a government institution for which all Indians pay taxes, direct or indirect, and it's from that money that all these government institutions are running. So now if you design a government institution's policy in such a way that you will exclude a certain portion of society, then you are not doing justice to all Indians. There is no question of sabka saath, sabka vikas. Please take the hijab out of the equation. Tomorrow, if an institution were to say, all students shall necessarily wear Superman or Superwoman costumes. Institutional autonomy? Where does that argument take you? So the argument simply has to be that if a uniform is prescribed for purposes of identification of students, yes, please conform to the uniform. But if you have certain requirements based on religion, based on culture, based on conscience, you should be allowed to have that reasonable accommodation. Finally, what I'd like to say is that no Indian woman must be compelled to make a trade-off with her conscience. You can't say put your conscience on hold in case you want to access government education. That is simply not on. It was a question also of conscience. It was a question of what a woman would decide for herself. And lastly, there's a saying in Kannada, because I am from Udupi, and Miss Bhatt, I'm not very sure, but Miss Nesargi is certainly from Karnataka. The argument is that they get provoked by the hijab. Are you going to run this country based on a heckler's veto? We have a saying in Kannada,
Geeta ji, I'll just come.
How does it bother anybody's father if somebody wears this or somebody wears that? You have no business interfering in another person's choice of dress.
All right. Geeta ji, you wanted to reply?
It's best said that
the
investment liberty ends where the French
Mr. Hegde,
nose begins.
Mr. Hegde, let her respond.
You in the courts also there is a dress code, Vishnuji, we all know that. And Fatima Bibi was the first Supreme Court woman judge. I just wonder whether she did not wear a judge's uniform in the court. I would like to know that.
No, but that was her choice.
And the point is
her
that
choice,
this is a choice. So is it what our learned lady on the panel, when Madam said that when she went to the court and she was reprimanded that why she was not in a lawyer's uniform. If someone goes to the court not in a proper uniform, will the judges allow that lawyer to argue? And secondly, I want to put forth one case which happened in Kerala recently, where there is a 8th class Muslim girl who protested that when she was participating in the police force as a cadet corps, where school students do an internship, she said that she be allowed to cover her face and wear full sleeve shirts, because the cadet uniform has got half sleeve shirt. It was refused by the State Home Ministry, saying that this cannot be permitted.
Yes,
this
but by the same token,
so why is it that,
but Geeta ji,
the principle remains the same. It is a matter of a uniform.
Geeta ji, by the same token, there are men of the Sikh faith who serve in turbans around the world in armies which have accepted that it is a matter of faith and a matter of pride and their conscience. And therefore, you've got soldiers in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police who wear a turban. You've got soldiers in the US Army who wear a turban, and traditionally always in the British Army who wear a turban. So again, it is an acceptance of faith. It is and respect of their faith. So, ma'am, why can't we respect each other?
Why do you fight political battles over women's dresses and what women ought to do?
Muslim Education Society of
Let
Kerala,
the women
which
decide.
has got 150 institutions running. Not only in India, abroad, they have banned peeling off the face in their institutions. Are they against Islam? Are those who belonging or studying, Muslims studying in these institutions, are they, against Islam? They are not following the practices of Islam.
This is somehow Islam versus other faiths.
Madam, none of my business.
All right, Geeta ji, 1 second. Sanjay wants to respond.
Because Sanjay, saying that is an integral part of
Okay, all right, 1 second. Sanjay Hegde respond to that, and I'll go across to my other panelists. Yeah.
No, the response is simple. I don't care who's a good Muslim, who's not a good Muslim. I don't care who's a good Hindu, who's not a good Hindu. Ultimately, if all of us build this country together, and all of us have to have an equal access to public facilities, you cannot deny public facilities or create them in such a manner as to exclude people. And particularly with regard to education, which builds a nation, you cannot tell people that if you profess your faith on your face, we will keep you out of this.
All right.
That is just
Geeta ji, I just want to go to my other panelists. Pramila ji, you had a point to make? Yes, ma'am.
Can I? Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, why do you want to have education? Education is for employment and for empowerment.
Yes.
If these ladies, if they want to wear hijab, are we not depriving them entering the doctor's profession? Are we not depriving them the police profession, navy, army, and all these things? Do you mean to say that they can join the army and wear hijab and fight it? Do you mean to say that they can wear hijab and they don't want to wear a white coat?
Let's ask Ifa that. Let's ask Ifa that question. Dr. Rizvi, Dr. Rizvi is a dentist. She's a doctor and she wears a hijab.
Please hear me. If you hear me, if the theory is it is their choice, they can wear any dress of their choice.
Yes.
Nagaland and tribal ladies, they wear some other dress.
Okay, so I get your point. Let's get an answer.
And college in that dress.
Pramila ji, let's get an answer to your question.
They are not distracting. There should be discipline.
Right. There should be discipline. And you've raised a point. 1 second, ma'am. You've raised a point about Muslim women wearing a hijab in educational institutions being denied potentially job opportunities. Ira, let me put that a question to you. Does the wearing of the hijab deny women job opportunities? For example, she said in the armed forces.
No, it's not, because I am doing job in clinics. It's not my own clinic. It is run by other person, and I am doing a job here. And I also had lots of clinics where I just go on call and doing my work. I will be back to my home. So it's not like that कि hijab पहनने से opportunities नहीं मिलती. There is lots of opportunities for you if you want to work. If you don't want to work, there is no opportunities. Okay. Hijab is not hampering my brain. Hijab is not hampering my hands. Hijab is not hampering my knowledge. Hijab is just a piece of cloth that I was wearing, that I am wearing, because it is comfortable me to wear a hijab and going to outside. It's my religious who tell me to wear a hijab. So it never hamper it never. ये कभी मुझे कोई ऐसी चीज नहीं है कि अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं मिली है या मैं जॉब नहीं कर रही हूँ या मेरे पास वर्क नहीं है और मैं नॉन मुस्लिम लोगों के साथ ही वर्क कर रही हूँ.
Okay. Shradan, I think there's another part of this judgment which is very important.
Wearing a hijab also, I want to tell you, it affects the health of a woman. Health. See, vitamin D. How do you get the vitamin D?
Right, ma'am. People wear headgear all across the world. No. Let's keep this sensible, ma'am. Let's keep that sensible, ma'am. 1 second, both of you. 1 second. Let me go across to Shradan. Shradan, 1 second. Let's keep this rational. Let's keep this rational. And let me just, Shradan, I found one part of Justice Dhulia's judgment to be important. But again, I want to balance it. While Justice Gupta said, is wearing a hijab an essential religious practice under Islam, and his judgment was based on his interpretation of what the right answer is, in his judgment, Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia said, the Constitution is a document of trust. The trust minorities have reposed upon the majority. Does this judgment or the statement by Justice Dhulia not indicate that the majority in this country needs to respect some of the rights of minorities, and that may in this case mean that if people are wearing a hijab, let them wear it?
Yeah, and that's the constitutional architecture of a constitution. It protects minority rights even though they may not be in tandem with majority. The reason you protect minority rights in any constitution is because it's not the majority's view. Therefore, you need to protect it, because otherwise in circumstances where you have majoritarian tendencies over a period of time, like we are today facing in India.
Interpreting rights of minority.
Madam, I did not interrupt you. Please do not interrupt me, madam. Please, kindly.
That is not the right.
So if we are going to have this kind of basically if prejudice is going to inform our decision making, then obviously there is going to be a problem. And I think what Justice Dhulia says is very important, in the sense that it's important that what the person believes is taken into account for constitutional adjudication, not what the text says. So if the genuine belief is held that I am required to wear this for X, Y or Z reason, you take that at face value. You don't need to further probe and examine on religious text to see whether this is the right belief or something else is the right belief. And this was exactly the case in Bijoy Emmanuel, where Jehovah's Witnesses kids, they were young kids who couldn't sing the national anthem. They just stood in attention while the national anthem was sung. And Justice Dhulia says this is exactly the same case. These women genuinely believe, this consensus belief that they have to wear the hijab, and they are wearing it. They are not disturbing everybody. And very important, they are not saying they are not going to wear the uniform. They are wearing the hijab in addition to the uniform. In fact, the girls made a submission before Karnataka High Court. We'll wear it of the color of the uniform as well. So there is no, this whole uniform is effectively just a straw man constructed, and because this is not the girls' case at all. Any of the girls saying that we are not wearing it. Okay. Even forget just one example. Even lawyers' dress was being discussed. We wear robes in court. Now there are women lawyers who wear, in addition to the robes, the hijab. How does that interfere with their lawyer advocacy in the court? Some of the best advocates I have seen are wearing a hijab. How does that in any way impact their ability to advocate their client's perspective in a specific case? It does not at all do so. So let us not inform our views based on prejudice. If we have to stay on logic, it's just like a Sikh patka or a turban. Does a turban stop a Sikh man's mind from functioning? Of course not. So it's the exact same thing with the hijab.
Geetaji, last word to you, and just briefly, ma'am, it's ultimately a matter of choice. Women in Iran are now fighting not to wear the hijab, and we respect them for their freedom of choice because we are a democracy. Similarly, over here, in a different context, some women in our country are saying, give us the right to wear our hijab because that is our freedom of choice. Ultimately, shouldn't our democracy, or isn't our democracy, all about granting that freedom of choice?
Well, yes, definitely, Vishnuji. Democracy is about giving that freedom of choice. So similarly, just like an individual has a freedom of choice, what to wear and what not to wear, I think institutions also have that, freedom of right or have that autonomy to decide that how they want to run their institution. And I think that autonomy they need to be granted. And also, those who are, please also remember that the government also funds various institutions which are, giving education to the minorities, which is being funded by the government, because there was a question which was raised by Mr. Hegde saying that it is the taxpayers' money from which these institutions are running. Please remember that such kind of institutions are being funded by the government.
All right.
Also, I would like to...
Can I just have a quick rebuttal?
I want to put forth that this also needs to come to light, that whether, because it is again and again Sikh turbans are being brought in question, that is an integral part of their faith. Whether burqa is or whether
Ira feels this is an integral part of her faith. She has worn it. I presume her mother has worn it. Others have worn it.
There are institutions which have banned healing of
Geetaji, I'm interrupting you only because I'm out of time, and I'm being unfair to Mr. Hegde by not allowing him a chance to this thing. Institutional autonomy versus the autonomy of the mind of individuals. That's what this is about at so many levels. We're out of time. Thanks very much for being with us. Good night.